6 to And as usual, I'm going to ask that everybody mute your electronic devices so that we can proceed uninterrupted. We're going to start with a little housekeeping matter because it turns out our clerk, Rebecca Terrell, apparently decided to use her vacation time at this time of year. Maybe she heard that we do a use it or lose it policy, I'm not sure. But in any event, she is not with us, and under Council Rule number 5, Council has to choose one of its own to carry out the duties of the clerk during the meeting. And I have asked Councilwoman Baldridge, and she has graciously agreed to carry out these duties, provided she gets the assistance, which she will, from our Administrator Lumsden with respect to the minutes. So I'm going to ask for a motion that Ms. Baldridge be selected to carry out the duties of the clerk for the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Those came real quick.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so there we have it. We now have a clerk for the meeting, and I am going to note that there's a quorum, and Madam Clerk, can you confirm a quorum?
I confirm the presence of a quorum.
Thank you. We also have an agenda that has been circulated, and there's been no objection to it, so we proceed with that. The first item of business is, of course, the minutes from our November 7th meeting. And in Becky's absence, I did circulate some changes, mainly to add the appropriate citations to the Ohio Code with respect to our going into executive session at the last meeting. This is a requirement that you document why you're going into executive session and under what statutory provision you're relying. So I circulated a revised version with some red line copy. Also, I've been told that Councilwoman Duke has some changes that she would like to have as friendly amendments, and I don't object to them, but I would like her to just read them into the record.
Thank you. At the bottom of page 4, the sentence should simply read, Ms. Duke asked her title and clarify that it will not be finance director, as this is statutory. The deleted part is the rest of the sentence. I did not ask for a written summary of the new employee's qualifications. That's the change at the bottom of page 4. At the top of page 5, the sentence would read, Ms. Duke asked if this is a managerial, professional or clerical position, considering the job description and her illustrative background mentioned. And Village Administrator Lumsden stated that this is a clerical position. The change is simply to note that I had inquired if it's professional, considering the job description and her background, which had been previously mentioned.
Okay. May I assume that you are making a motion for these amendments?
I move the amendments as
Do
a
it.
friendly amendment to the minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The amendments are now, the minutes are now amended, both as circulated with the red line copy and with Ms. Duke's amendments. And now I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So moved. Second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We continue, and I know you've all heard of Black Friday, and you've heard of Cyber Monday. Well, this is Proclamation first Monday in December, and I have some, one of the joys of this job really is to recognize people who have given a great deal to the village, and we have 2 of them here. And then we also have some proclamations for baby trees that I am reviving as a practice. And when it comes to that, I will read one proclamation and then the names of the births. So I'm going to start with the proclamation for David Hamilton. And David, would you stand, please? So that this gets recorded properly, I'm going to use the microphone here. And this is a proclamation honoring village resident David B. Hamilton in recognition of his long record of public service. Whereas David B. Hamilton has been a resident of the village of Glendale for over 75 years and has lived in his house on Woodbine Avenue, where he still resides, for 67 of those years. Whereas in his long life, David has left a distinguished record of public service, beginning with his service as a paratrooper in the 11th Airborne Division and in the Japanese Occupational Force in the United States Army during and after World War II. Whereas after his military service in 1946, David married Grace Cleveland of the Women's Army Corps, who was the daughter of former Glendale Mayor James H. Cleveland, and in 1973, David and Grace were blessed with identical twin daughters, Jean and Joan. Whereas David's career included work as a certified public accountant, as a financial officer in Chase Industries, and as a financial officer in Quest 4, Inc., where he works to this day. And whereas James H. Carruthers, who fittingly enough is our longest-serving mayor, appointed David to the Glendale Board of Appeals on January 2nd, 1968. And whereas the Board of Appeals is responsible for, among other things, hearing applications from residents who, when faced with zoning restrictions that limit their ability to fully enjoy their property, seek a variance from those restrictions. And whereas David served on the board from his appointment until his retirement in November of 2022, making the difficult decisions to balance the village's need to consistently enforce its laws and the needs of residents to make appropriate use of their property. And whereas, despite his many accomplishments and long service, David has never attempted to draw attention to himself, but has led a life of quiet dignity that garnered him the respect and affection of those who knew him. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by Donald A. Lofty, Mayor of the Village of Glendale, Hamilton County, State of Ohio, Section 1, that the village expresses its sincere gratitude for David B. Hamilton's many years of services to his country and our village. Section 2, that the village recognizes in particular David B. Hamilton's 54 years of service on the Glendale Board of Appeals, which represents a time span of service that is unlikely to have ever been matched in the past or to be matched in the future. And whereas, Section 3, that this proclamation be spread upon the minutes of the December 5th, 2022 meeting of the council in recognition of his long life and public service of David B. Hamilton. David, on behalf of the village and all of us, thank you. Now, we are missing a signature on the proclamation because our clerk is not with us today. So when we get that signature, I will contact David, and we will give you the full proclamation. Thank you, David. Thank you. Number 2, I'm going to ask Virginia Chambers to come forward. Yeah. Here. This is a proclamation, excuse me, honoring the history of the Grand Finale Restaurant and its importance to the village of Glendale. Whereas 100 years ago, the property at the southeast corner of Congress and Sharon Avenues in the village of Glendale was purchased by John J. Kelly and served as Kelly's Saloon and later as Kelly's Corner Market. Whereas on August 6, 1975, Larry and Cindy Yaus opened a restaurant on that property and called it the Grand Finale. Whereas in February 1977, Larry and Cindy hired Virginia Chambers, who managed the Grand Finale for 44 of the 46 years it was open. And whereas the staff of the Grand Finale grew from 15 to over 100 and played a key role in the success of the restaurant, and that staff has included Fred Mills with 42 years, Vicki Raybuck with 41 years, Dave Grady with 41 years, Deb Cahill with 32 years, Jen Asmaglu with 25 years, and Margie Lada Bowers with 21 years. And whereas the Grand Finale was a much-loved destination for within and far beyond the village of Glendale, with the staff developing enduring relations with their customers and sharing with them many of life's ongoing memorable occasions, and whereas the Grand Finale for 46 years was synonymous with delicious desserts and foods, including chocolate cordial pie, cheesecake, caramel custard, I'm getting hungry already, chicken ginger, and savory crepes. And whereas word of the quality of the food and service of the Grand Finale spread throughout the southwestern Ohio area, and many came to the restaurant who would otherwise never have come to Glendale. And whereas, although many were concerned that when, on December 23rd, 2021, the Grand Finale shut its doors, it may have been for the last time, the historic property has been sold to another restaurateur, and the journey will continue. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by Donald A. Lofty, Mayor of the Village of Glendale, Hamilton County, State of Ohio, Section 1, that the village expresses its supreme gratitude to the Yauses, Ms. Chambers, and the dedicated employees for their work and success in bringing great food and recognition to the village of Glendale. And Section 2, that this proclamation be spread upon the minutes of the December 5th, 2022 meeting of council in recognition and remembrance of the experience so many of us enjoyed while dining at the Grand Finale. Thank you, Virginia. As I said, you will be getting an official copy of this once we get all the signatures on it. Thank you.
Firstly, I'm very grateful to the village, residents of Glendale, our many mentors, customers,
You had a great run. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to stay seated for this one. As I said, Glendale had a tradition over the years of recognizing new births, and that sort of fell by the wayside for a while, and I'd like to revive it. So today, I'm going to read a proclamation for the first child who was born in the village in in the year 2022, and then I will read the names of the other children, all of whom will have a proclamation with their name and their parents' name, and a tree planted on public ground recognizing their birth. So, this is a mayor's proclamation, proclamation recognizing the birth of Oliver Ray Berline and the planting and dedication of a tree in his honor. Whereas the Berline family, and I won't give the address now, but lives in historic Glendale. On January 24th, 2022, Oliver Ray Berline was born. And whereas the village of Glendale celebrates each new Glendale birth by announcing it to the entire community and the planting of a tree. Now therefore be it proclaimed by Donald A. Lofty, Mayor of the Village of Glendale, Hamilton County, State of Ohio, Section 1, that an ivory, silk, lilac tree or other tree chosen by the parents and the village has been planted and dedicated to honor and celebrate the birth of Oliver Ray Berline. May this tree grow and mature and continue to symbolize the village's values of family and community. Section 2, the village thanks Emily and Jacob Berline for bringing another soul into our village and demonstrating their desire to live and raise a family in our beloved village. May God bless you all. Donald A. Lofty. And in addition to Oliver, there will be proclamations for Shay Seela Uline, Theodore Francis Cobb, Benjamin Francis Cobb, twins, Daniel Philip Elfline, Cassandra Miller, and that is it. So this is, I hope, a wonderful tradition in Glendale that we can continue. With that, I am going to turn to the public comment section of our meeting and ask if anybody wishes to address council.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Parrish, resident of Village of Glendale at 176 Washington. It seems like every time I address council, it's always in a negative mode, so it seems, instead of an informative mode. You guys resurface some streets in Glendale, but it seems like each time you resurface, seems like my part of town is always last or forgotten. You resurface Cole and Lincoln, and in between that is my house. And it didn't get resurfaced, but there was damage done to the speed bump that's been unfinished for 2 years as they exited. I don't know if that's the street committee or whatever, but the pipe that I've been coming to council and addressing that's in between the sidewalk and the street, which is the Village of Glendale's responsibility, has gone overlooked for over 15 years. This is the old piping system that's supposed to be up under the ground, and we're having so much trouble with our water system now. I come, and I think speaking in plain English for common sense or even educated people like you to understand that I'm just bringing facts because I'm tired of you taking my tax dollars and I'm not getting anything in return. Not a damn thing. My dad didn't raise us like that. And you can keep your head down and not look at me while I address you, because that's how you do most times. But your moral integrity, the level of the moral integrity on this Village of Glendale representatives is at an all-time low. I mean, you lie about Summit and the conditions of water there until you have to give an apology to the Brock Foundation, and then you don't say anything. How much harm have you done? After 5 years of neglect and mosquito-infested field, and you act like that's nothing. We have serious problems here. And because of the criminality that is attached to contracts and things here, you guys don't want to address them. People think that I want to destroy this village. If I wanted to destroy this village, I would open up a blog on social media and put documents out that would throw you up under the fucking bus. I try to be diplomatic with you, but since you don't respect black folks, that's out of the picture. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, though. I'm going to have just a little bit more patience with you guys before I expose just the devastating set of circumstances that is around this village and the actions that have been taken or not taken. And if you guys don't act, I'm not going to keep on talking to you. I'll show you just how fucked up I can be with fucking
Mr. Parrish,
That's
that
enough.
language is inappropriate, and
This is Ebonics.
I respect your opinions.
This is Ebonics because plain English does not get to you.
I respect your opinions, but the language is
No, you
inappropriate.
don't. You lied about the park and then sent the kids out there to play on it.
Mr. Parrish, continue, but try to keep your language down.
Oh, so you did understand that part, didn't you? I told people before I came here that I would be speaking in Ebonics because I know that would reach you.
You have about a minute.
And David, you lose a whole contract, not just one document. You lose all the documents for public records keeping, and you're the village administrator. There's nothing in a file for the Phase 1 sanitary sewer project because the keeper of it has lost everything, the reports, the inspections, everything. We don't even know who worked on it because the subcontracting and the pre-subcontracting document is gone. And he still has his job. That's amazing.
Does anybody else wish to address council? Okay. We will turn now to old business. We have two items there. Start with very old business, ordinance 2022-04, an ordinance inserting chapter 154.59 in the Village of Glendale Code of Ordinances, establishing regulations related to residential and commercial signage in the Village of Glendale, as recommended by the Glendale Planning and Historic Preservation Commission. This particular ordinance has been around for a while. We have been cautious in moving forward with it to be sure that we are right, because this involves the First Amendment constitutional rights of our residents and others who might be coming into our village. It has been amended twice, and so amended and re-amended, and today is the third read for the re-amendment, the re-amended ordinance. And in order to have a very clear record that we are passing it, I would like to have a motion to enact ordinance 2022-04 as re-amended.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And now it's open to discussion. There's-
Question, Mr. Mayor. If
Yeah.
this has been around for so long, one of my concerns was the arbitrary, somewhat arbitrary in my view, use of limitation of three signs in the yard. Where does that section stand now? Do you recall?
It is still in the ordinance.
Mayor Lofty, it's a 20 square foot maximum though, correct?
You're referring to the temporary signs?
Right.
No, the temporary signs can only be four square feet each sign.
What type of sign are we referring to as far as the 3 sign limit?
Any sign that goes into a residential yard. So others can be, other signs can be larger. We have, for commercial property, we allow larger signs. But for if you're putting a sign on residential property, regardless of the content, it should be no more than 4 square feet. Further discussion? I'm going to ask Administrator Lumsden to call the roll for the votes.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. For the ordinance, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
No?
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler,
Aye.
Mr. Baysmith. Aye. And Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
Motion carried. This ordinance is passed. Glendale, now we will still wait 30 days for it to go into effect because there is no emergency language here, but we will have a sign ordinance starting in the 5th of January, and we will then begin to enforce it. The next piece of old business is Resolution 2022-32, a resolution authorizing the conditional use of land at 1021 Morse Avenue for an in-ground swimming pool to be constructed pursuant to certain conditions. This measure was approved earlier this evening at the Glendale Planning and Historic Preservation Committee meeting, and it was, by all members present, unanimous. And so I would like to know, is there a motion for this resolution?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, this is the first time I recall voting on. Is this standard procedure anytime a swimming pool's going in?
I'm afraid
the
so.
village?
Swimming pools are conditional uses under our zoning code, and so that requires approval by council. And so we always, it's just one of the things that we require.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Mr. Lumsden.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye?
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler,
Aye.
Mr. Baysmith. And Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
Turning now to new business, and this will be ordinance 2022-60, an ordinance authorizing amendment of the 2022 appropriations of the Glendale Fire Apparatus Fund and Village Plan and General Improvement Fund and declaring an emergency. I'm going to ask Ms. Masenko, head chair of our fire committee, to move this, explain this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 3 years ago, the village began looking into the replacement of our 1999 Freightliner fire truck. This conversation was started because the National Fire Protection Association standards call for a fire truck to be retired after 25 years of service. And they're for good reason. Most important, aging fire trucks put everyone in danger, especially our firefighters. The older trucks are costly to keep functioning safely. There are significant expenses, including downtime, maintenance, repairs, and depreciation. And in the case of our 23-year-old truck, finding replacement parts is a growing challenge. So this year, as the fire truck is reaching its 23-year mark, the fire committee took up the issue again. After looking at a number of options, we agreed that engine 245 needed to be replaced within 2 or 3 years. And we began working through the state procurement office to receive bids from approved vendors. In the fall, we identified the preferred manufacturer and received a bid and a delivery schedule of at least 24 months. Payment would be due upon delivery of the new truck. It was a big decision before the committee, and we chose to wait on making such a significant purchase to see how the pricing and delivery times would change. 6 months later, we saw the delivery time for the new truck grow to at least 30 months, and the price had jumped by 17%. What's more, we were being advised that manufacturers intended to raise the cost by another 8 to 10% this month, so we had to act. With this news, in November, the committee unanimously and courageously agreed to recommend to council the purchase of the new Sutphen fire truck we are voting on tonight. If it's approved, the village will have nearly 3 years to raise the funds for this purchase, and in 2025, we'll have a safe new truck for our firefighters to serve the residents of Glendale, and we can retire the old truck within the guidelines of the National Fire Protection Association. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Masenko, would you care to make a motion?
Yes, I move that we appropriate the funds for the purchase of this new fire truck.
Do I have a second?
So moved.
Discussion.
Yes, I heard Ms. Masenko speak of raising funds, $830,228 over the course of 3 years. What is envisioned to raise the funds? Are donations envisioned, appeals to the public, or are we planning to use village revenues, meaning tax dollars?
First of all, I will allow Captain Lerman, who is here representing the fire department, to speak anytime he wishes on the subject of the truck. And so just feel free to chime in whenever you like. Any further comments, any answers to Ms. Duke's question? My understanding is, and I think we have a fair amount of support in the room right now, that the firefighters themselves are prepared to go forward and seek donations.
But I can comment a bit on that, Marilyn. We haven't sorted out the structure of the fundraising campaign that will need to have some thought put to it. There are lots of restrictions on that, but we see this as a combination of grants, of gifts, of fundraising activities. We would hope that it would be carried out in partnership with the village and the Firefighters Association. But to talk about where and how much is coming from which area, we can't get into that right now. We just haven't built the campaign yet.
Let me just add, we're starting with a base. Years ago, a farsighted council put aside $60,000 for the purchase of a new fire truck. That money is still in our general fund, but we're still, or no, what is it?
The money exists, $62,000 exists within the fire apparatus replacement fund, which is a capital fund within the village's budget.
Right, and if I'm not mistaken, we have received a recent contribution just spontaneously to that fund.
Correct, and that is reflected in section 1 of the ordinance to allow us to appropriate the full amount of $67,000.
Okay. And then we also anticipate selling the antique fire engine, the Fox, to somebody who would find such a vehicle attractive as a collector's item. And we're thinking you can get $20,000, $25,000 for that one. And plus there's whatever trade-in value we can get for the existing engine. So we've got a base that we're starting with. Not a big one, but it's a base.
But for now, to be clear, this ordinance authorizes the expenditure from village funds of $763,000 and $67,000 that exists in the fire apparatus fund.
That is correct.
Okay. So you would build some sort of a plan that would include fundraising, and that would be village, fire department, and anybody else that wants to be involved in fundraising. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then,
Mr. Beaugrand also has some ideas, investment ideas as well.
okay,
So it's a, you know, we have just, we need to put together this plan, but first we need to understand if we are moving forward. Or how are we?
But Nancy, this 763,000 would, even though it would not be owed for 36 months, this would need to go into, this would need to be pulled from VPGI into a special village account, escrow account, so Sutphen would know that it's
Correct.
truly there in 36
Correct.
months.
David, you want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
speak to that?
Thank you. So the money would remain in our current bank accounts, collecting the same amount of interest that it currently does. It would only be appropriated and encumbered for the purchase of the fire truck, meaning that if we were to look at our budgets, we would see this as effectively riding our budget as an anticipated expense. But the funds would not leave any village account to go into any kind of like an escrow or anything. They would remain in our Huntington investments and continue to generate interest for the VPGI fund.
So let me understand then that the money, the expenses incurred, although we're keeping the money, I understand that, it would still show up as an expense at the end of this calendar year, 2022.
It will, yes, it will show up as an encumbrance.
can you explain the guideline you spoke of when you said we'd be able to retire the old truck within the guideline, and I think you said National Fire Institute?
I think Captain Learman can probably speak to that.
Okay.
The 25-year,
So NFPA, National Fire Protection Agency, has a regulation out there, excuse me, that at 25 years, a fire apparatus should be recommended for retirement. And that's the schedule that we're following, is the NFPA guidelines.
Should be or must be?
We should follow the NFPA recommendation.
Should follow the NFPA recommendation. Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Further discussion?
I do have a question and comment, starting with a comment. When the two levies passed last month, we had talked at various town hall meetings about a strategic plan, coming up with a plan, and a new fire engine was part of the many items on that plan. I think this new fire administration is doing a fantastic job. The volunteers, the fire committee has done due diligence on this work. I just I'm not ready, and I know what we're up against with this deadline from Sutphen. I fully realize that, and I'm in the private sector, I fully realize inflation, what we're up against. But I just think with the strategic plan, last week in a waterworks meeting, we're looking at $5 million in the next several years on infrastructure for water and sewer, and not even including the new street projects over the next 3 to 5 years. With the strategic plan, putting this new fire engine in there, I'm just not ready to, knowing full well about this Sutphen deadline, I'm just not ready to waive the 3 reads. I think this is too important for further discussion for council.
Any further discussion? Okay, do I have a motion to waive 3 reads?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, I will ask Mr.
Just one more. They're talking about this price increase. Will makes a good point. When does this price increase go into effect? Does anyone know?
December 14th.
December 14th, they'll put a price increase into effect.
How much is that price increase?
8 to 10%.
I'm sorry, I can't.
8 to 10%.
8 to 10%? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we would not get delivery, you say, for 30 months now, if we ordered it now. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, for 30 months.
Mr. Lumsden?
Thank you. On the motion to waive 3 reads? Do we do the
Ordinance
or the
first.
ordinance
You
first?
do the waiver 3 reads first.
Okay, I'm sorry.
On the motion to waive 3 reads, Mr. Bessel?
Aye.
Ms. Duke?
No.
Ms. Pasenko?
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler?
No.
Mr. Baysmith?
No.
Ms. Baldridge?
Aye.
Well, this puts us in the position that mayors really don't like to be in. We like to have harmony, but when you can't have that, you have to do what you think is right. And I'm looking at this as, this is a vehicle that we need, we're going to need it, and every time we put it off, we're going to be adding months at the other end to the delivery time and cost. And we have seen that happen just in the last 6 months or so. So I conclude that right now, for the health of the village, it's fire department, and just to say a word about that, at some time years ago, there was a question that came up before the village. Should we have a fire department? And the village decided that we should. If we are going to have one, we need to maintain it. These guys do a fantastic job. We thank you. I thank you every day of my life for what you do for the village and putting yourselves at risk. So it's really a feeling for the firefighters, for the village, that I vote aye to waive 3 reads.
And for the motion to pass the ordinance, Mr. Bessel?
Aye.
Ms. Duke?
No.
Ms. Masenko?
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler?
No.
Mr. Baysmith?
No.
Ms. Baldridge?
Aye.
David, can I interrupt?
Yes.
I just want to confirm, do we not need 5 votes to waive the reads?
Afraid we do.
Yes.
Got ahead of myself there.
So
Okay.
we have 4 to waive the 3 reads.
Correct.
So that motion fails.
Right. So now we have 3 votes, 3-3 tie again to purchase the engine. And I vote aye for the reasons that I've already stated. What this will mean is that unless we can persuade Sutphen to give us a few extra weeks on the, on their next price increase, we're going to have to be back here again talking about appropriating money for an increased price for for a fire engine. So I'm hoping that maybe somebody can use their magic and contacts with Sutphen to say, listen, the council voted for it, and you know, there is no reason to just hold our feet to the fire for an extra couple weeks. So,
Kathy, can I ask a procedural question?
Yes.
With the failure of the three reads motion, does the passage of the ordinance this evening have any significance?
No.
Okay.
well, wait a minute, excuse me.
Because this would go to.
This would be the first read.
First read.
This is the first read.
Okay. Yeah,
This does count as the first read.
yeah, it's first read, okay. Okay, we're continuing on the journey. I don't know if this next ordinance is moot or not, but maybe we should just bring it forward and,
Can a contract be signed?
I do not have an appropriation to sign the contract against, so
right,
no.
So the contract cannot be signed?
no.
Correct. So
So,
with that in mind, you should still procedurally vote on it and perhaps maybe not have a motion to waive the three reads in light of the last,
okay,
but that's completely up to the council
And-
members.
And also worth mentioning that the language in the ordinance does quote a price not to exceed. And on that, I apologize, there's a typo in section 2 that should read 830, not 803. It does list that not to exceed number, so that would need to be amended if the price were to increase.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor,
yes,
I move to table ordinance 2022-61.
well, it's not before us yet, so it's kind of premature to table it.
I'm sorry, I thought there was before us.
No, I haven't had a motion, on 61, I haven't had a motion yet. So, I'll put it on the table, and
Oh.
then we can decide whether you want to table it or not. This is ordinance 2022-61, an ordinance authorizing the village administrator to enter into a contract with Heritage Fire Equipment, authorized representative for Sutphen Corporation, for the purchase of a Sutphen heavy-duty custom pumper, complete, and declaring an emergency. Are we declaring an emergency here?
We are declaring an emergency based on the December 14th
Right.
price deadline.
Okay. Okay, so, Mr. Lumsden, maybe you can explain just why this motion is needed here. I can understand it, but just to be
So
sure.
before I proceed, I'd like to, we do need to amend section 2 to correct the,
We don't have a motion, it's not on the table yet.
oh,
It's not
I
yet.
apologize.
Yeah.
So this ordinance would be necessary for me to enter into an agreement with Heritage Fire Equipment to purchase a fire truck, regardless of price. It does require council approval of my entering into this agreement. And it is, as I was saying, it is listed as an emergency because we were intending to act quickly to avoid an upcoming price increase.
Okay?
Mr. Mayor, now is a motion to table appropriate.
No, not yet. I need a motion for the ordinance.
So moved?
And a second?
Second.
Okay. Now,
I move to table ordinance 2022-61.
is,
Second.
okay. Discussion on the motion to table. Okay.
On the
Mr.
motion.
Lumsden?
Thank you. On the motion to table ordinance 2022-61, Mr. Bessel?
I'm not sure why we're tabling the motion, why we're tabling the ordinance.
We're tabling the ordinance to, until something is done with 2022-60. So that's the reason. We can bring it from the table next month
Okay,
or at a subsequent time.
but it would, this could serve as the first read for this if we don't table it.
Correct.
So I would say no, I'd rather not table that ordinance, no.
Ms. Duke?
So then if we don't table it, we just would not vote on 61? 2022-61?
Well, as it stands right now, it is declaring an emergency.
Right.
This is not a first read. It's an emergency measure.
Technically, the emergency just means it goes into effect on passage and not waiting 30 days. The waiver of 3 reads is different. It's an administrative matter that requires 5 votes, actually.
So this is not a waiver of 3 reads.
No.
This is not the first read.
This would be the first read of this ordinance.
There's,
No,
Correct.
We're saying that we should,
it's an emergency measure. It's not the first.
there's no waiving of the 3 reads motion that's been made.
correct, the reads have to do with what happens before council takes action. The emergency clause has to do with when it goes into effect after council takes action.
Right.
So right now, we're just saying, do you want to waive the 3 reads, which I think we're all in agreement doesn't make a lot of sense here. You can proceed to simply have this be the first read and take no further action. Or you can table it until the next meeting, understanding that the first read or waiver of all of them would occur the next time you meet.
Well, in order for it, since it's connected to the previous, and the previous has already had its first read, I think we just allow this to have its first read as well. So I vote no to table. Back
To-
the point.
To table the ordinance, Ms. Duke?
Yes,
Ms. Masenko?
No.
Mr. Kreidler?
Yes?
Mr. Baysmith?
Yes.
And Ms. Baldridge?
No.
And once again, the chair votes no. So the measure is not tabled. It is on the, it's before council, and this is a first read.
excuse me. Is it appropriate, since this is an emergency measure, to vote up or down on it? It's an emergency. We have not waived the 3 reads.
The emergency just says it's going to go into effect immediately once it is passed, but it can go through 3 reads to get there.
Do we need to delete or remove the "and declaring an emergency" language?
No, I think we want it to go into effect without waiting 30 days for it. We just recognize that it's going to have to go through 3 reads.
The emergency clause can be operative, whether you waive the 3 reads and have it go into effect immediately, whether you enact it on the second read and have it go into effect at that time, or you can even have all 3 reads, take it 3 separate meetings, and on that 3rd meeting, if you elected to waive the emergency clause, it would take effect in another 30 days, so it would be a full 90 days roughly. Or if you kept the emergency clause in after 3 reads, you have arrived at this at 3 separate meetings over roughly 60 days and would have it take effect immediately.
So is the stipulation to 2022-61 that this is a first read?
Correct.
Yes.
Also, I hate to point this out, but it could well be a moot point as to whether it remains, whether the emergency language remains, because it takes a 2/3 vote to pass an emergency, provision, ordinance, and we don't have 2/3 vote right now. But that doesn't mean that we can't leave the language in there and see if people change their minds as we go forward. So with that, we have a first read on ordinance 2022-61, and we turn to ordinance 2022-62, an ordinance addressing the provisions of amended substitute HB 172, adopting Glendale, Ohio Code of Ordinances, Title 9, Chapter 97, Fireworks, and declaring an emergency. This is going to require a little explanation, so Will, do you want to lead things off, and perhaps Kathy can also help us out?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. On October 27th of 2021, so over a year ago, the Ohio General Assembly passed House Bill 172. This, when it was in effect, it makes the discharge, ignition, and explosion of fireworks legal in the state of Ohio. And then Governor DeWine signed HB 172 on November 8th of 2021, so about 13 months ago. The Police Committee with Solicitor Ryan's counsel, we studied and reviewed this law in 4 separate public meetings going back to earlier this year, this summer. We learned in those meetings that at least 88 Ohio municipalities have opted out of this law. With Glendale's historic homes and tree canopies, the Police Committee voted 3-0 to recommend to council that Glendale opt out of House Bill 172, which is this ordinance 2022-62 upon us here. In the police meetings, several Glendale residents also expressed their support for opting out of this. And we also, in the most recent meeting, we also discussed repeat offenders, which was an issue for some of us in the committee. And Solicitor Ryan, I think you do a better job of explaining the repeat offender.
Sure. So in this ordinance that is the companion to stating the village's position on the House bill, would provide regulations related to fireworks that don't currently exist in the village code. It's a fairly short ordinance. In short, it prohibits the selling, possessing, discharge, and transport of fireworks, referring to the Ohio Revised Code sections that are relevant with respect to that. And the revised code provides exemptions for sparklers and the snappers and some of those smaller kind of objects related to fireworks. And then with that, there is an exemption for who would be considered a licensed exhibitor of fireworks or, quote, licensed exhibitor as it is defined within the revised code. So if there is a licensed fireworks show, that would fall outside of this prohibition. And then any violations related to these prohibitions would see penalties under the last section. And after discussion with the committee, they wanted to see something where a calendar year would see an escalation in penalties for repeat offenders. So with that, we landed on $150 and a minor misdemeanor for the first offense, $250 and a 4th-degree misdemeanor for the second offense, and $500 and a 3rd-degree misdemeanor for the 3rd offense or any offense thereafter, with those criminal penalties and financial amounts tied to them meeting the statutory guidelines. And like I said, this ordinance kind of has 2 functions. Section 1 of the ordinance adopts this framework, and then Section 2 says that the council affirmatively opts out of the House bill related to fireworks.
Do I have a motion for the ordinance?
So moved.
Second?
And discussion?
Yes, I may have,
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. And a motion to dispense with 3 reads.
Second?
Sorry.
thank you. I may have missed it, but would fireworks include sparklers or twirlers that the kids use, you know?
Those are okay. Those are still okay. David and Kathy kind of explained it best. Anything you can buy at Kroger would still be legal. It's once you get to the highway stops and the Tennessee-type stores, those are all going to be, those wouldn't be allowed unless you had a license. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yes.
Further discussion? Mr. Lumsden?
On the motion to waive 3 reads, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler,
Aye.
Mr. Baysmith, Ms. Baldridge,
Aye.
and for the ordinance, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler,
Aye.
Mr. Baysmith, and Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
Ordinance is passed. We turn to ordinance 2022-63, an ordinance amending the Village of Glendale police payout schedule and declaring an emergency. Basically, this is an effort just to bring our fines and court costs up to standards of our neighboring villages and cities. We've been on the low side for a while, and I don't know, David, do you have anything to add to that?
Not particularly, unless,
This is mayor's court, and when people are brought into mayor's court for traffic violations or whatever, they are required to pay a fine and court costs. And this is intended to just bring us up to the standards of our general area. So do I have a motion for this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
And a motion to dispense with 3 reads?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
There are 4 or 5 pages, no, it's more than that, in this attachment. How will this be made public? How will this information be publicized?
It's a good question. We'll certainly announce it in the village newsletter, and we will post it on the village website. And it will become part of our ordinances or I'm not sure if this doesn't actually go into the other ordinances, does it?
the copy of the exhibit would, because it's included within the ordinance, but it would be posted on the village website.
Okay.
So can we give an example of using a speeding ticket, what the current fine is and what it would be? I'm sorry, I can't hear.
It depends on the speed. They range in like 5 to 10 speed increments.
You're still not coming into the
A
microphone.
speeding ticket could go anywhere from $124 up to $155.
If you go to page 4, on page 4, under near the top, the third one down, 73.10, it gives the fines for various levels of speed over the posted limit.
I see. So it could go anywhere from $125 up to $195.
Well, bear in mind, it's, the $75 in court costs remains the same.
Oh.
So the fine is to the left of that. And the judge, magistrate, has discretion in imposing that fine depending upon whatever circumstances the defendant might present, or, quite frankly, their ability to pay and history. Do I have a motion for this?
We have a motion
We're sorry.
for the ordinance in 3 reads.
Okay, good, yeah. So, any further discussion? Okay, Mr. Lumsden.
For the motion to waive 3 reads, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko, I'm sorry, Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler,
Aye.
Mr. Baysmith,
Aye.
and Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
And for the ordinance, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler,
Aye.
Mr. Baysmith,
Aye.
and Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
Okay, and we turn now to the one that we've all been waiting for. This is ordinance 2022-64, an ordinance adopting all 2023 General Fund, Enterprise Fund, Special Revenue Fund, and Miscellaneous Fund budgets, and providing wage adjustments as described in the attached Exhibit A, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Bessel, could you introduce this for us?
Oh, boy. I'll ask for help from Mr. Lumsden if I get stuck. Council, first of all, and the entire village administrative staff is grateful for the confidence that the general public showed in us by passing the additional levy. This will allow our budget to balance going forward, and will give us a few years of breathing room and not be in a deficit or near deficit position as we have been trying to provide the services for the village. We met as a finance committee, and then utilities committee also met. And the finance committee worked very hard to make sure that we were able to keep our costs in line as much as possible. And happy to say that what we had projected in all of our deliberations through the summer as a finance committee, we were able to keep our budget at what the projected amount was. We were showing possibly a 155 surplus that we would use some of the extra money to be able to put towards more infrastructure improvements such as roads. We've actually hit about a 160 surplus, so that's very good. I think everybody on council is happy with what we've developed here, and enterprise as well. Jeff could speak more to that. Also, thanks to all the committees that met with the different departments and came up with what I think are very good budgets.
Do I have a motion for this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? I'm just going to add that, speaking of the surpluses and that, let's make it very clear that those surpluses are due to the additional levy that was passed in November. There would be no surpluses but for that levy.
We would actually be in a deficit
We would
position.
Mayor, I want to thank all of you that worked over Thanksgiving on this, too. I know there were a lot of dollars and crunching and all the committee heads and everyone, but especially that Thanksgiving week, so I appreciate it.
Any further discussion?
Yes, I recognize the tremendous amount of work that has gone into this proposed budget, as it does every year. And I'm very thankful and grateful for its being presented to council. However, I do favor a supplementary appropriations, as was done by council in passing 2019-45 and previously in passing 2018-56. Each of these ordinances were passed in the month of December, which allowed council to look at the year-end dollars and look at the proposed budget and come to grips with it, and then vote on it in January. Again, we have done this in the past with supplementary appropriations, and I favor it this December.
Okay.
I'll just make my comment. The problem with the continuing resolution is that we ended up going well into the next year, and at least in 1 year, we barely passed our final budget, waiting for closing numbers in time before the county would have come after us and said, you guys are late, where's your budget? So this is a case where we have some pretty good numbers for pretty good feeling of where we are with the budget, and I would like to see us just put it in there, put it in operation.
I think it also helps us when we roll into January, we have all of the new monies appropriated immediately, instead of having to do a catch-up later. After such time, we would actually pass the budget. But also, I think prior year and maybe the year prior to that, we've done it this way I have a high level of confidence this year because of the amount of work David put in to project where we would be at the end of the year on the numbers and on the 2022 actuals. Since we only have less than a month to go, he was able to project out exactly where we were going to land, and so we have a high level of confidence in this particular budget. So I'd say we proceed with voting.
Let's see, we don't have the motions.
We have a motion for the ordinance. We need 3 reads.
Yeah, I would need a motion to waive 3 reads.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? Mr. Lumsden.
For the motion to waive 3 reads, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
No.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler,
Aye.
Mr. Baysmith,
Aye.
and Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
And for the ordinance, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler,
Aye.
Mr. Baysmith,
Aye.
and Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
That concludes our new business, and we'll now turn to the reports from the mayor, village administrator, standing committees, and special committees. And I will begin with the mayor's report. We had no births reported last month. We had 1 death that we were informed of, and that's Mary M. Goldberg, who passed away on November 15th, 2022, at the age of 91. She had been a long-term resident of the village for some 58 years. We have just recently, just today, learned of another passing of a former Glendale resident, and that is Johanna Martha Schielis, who passed away on November 10th at age 94. She too was a long-term resident of the village, from living here from 1979 to 2012. She was the wife of Herman Schielis, who was a Princeton High School teacher. So with those, I would ask that we take a moment of silence. May they rest in peace. Going on with the mayor's report, as I mentioned, the election in 2022 returned results that were favorable to the village. We passed a 8.5% renewal levy, and we passed a 2.5% additional levy. And as Mr. Bessel, who is our Finance Committee Chair, has noted, that does enable us to budget for now without projecting a deficit. Another a new event coming up is a village Christmas, which will be held December 5th on the Harry Whiting Brown grounds. It will begin at 4:30 with children's crafts. One of the highlights is always highlight is the Glendale Elementary School Choir will perform. And then at 7:15, Santa's and an elf will arrive.
What day is that event?
I'm sorry, December 5th.
Saturday, the 10th, sorry.
10th, I'm sorry. Whoa, that's today.
We'd be
That's today.
missing it. We have to adjourn right now.
We're missing it
That
if
was,
it's today.
that was not a typo, that was a righto. Okay, so, having said that, there will be barbecue and bands, music, and the festivities should go on until about 10 o'clock. And that is it for the mayor's report. Mr. Lumsden?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of exciting things to announce here. I do believe we are nearing the finish line on the long-awaited restoration of the quiet zone in the village. We have received our confirmed right of entry permit from CSX to perform work on the railroad at Oak. Folks may remember Unfortunately, in the middle of the summer, CSX tore up that crossing, removing the quiet zone loops, which required the trains to begin sounding horns again. I don't have a very definitive timeline, but it is going to be sooner rather than later is what I'll say for right now. But more information will be sent out through the newsletter once that's available. Also worth noting, leaf collection is ending, as it always does, on December the 15th. So everyone's expected to have all leaves out to the street by December the 15th. The crew will then, after that date, go around and do one more collection on each street. That is your one opportunity to be collected. If you come out after your street is collected, unfortunately, those leaves will have to be bagged for Rumpke. Also, coming in January, excuse me, coming in January, we will be reformatting our utility bills in the village. As part of the water meter replacement program, we have adopted a new water billing software by the name of Amston that will give residents full-page water bills that come in regular-sized envelopes, printed on printer paper as opposed to the sometimes hard-to-read small green postcards. So we're excited to get those rolled out. There's going to be a lot of information that's going to come out through the newsletter, as well as we're going to be filming a This is Glendale special on that. So there's going to be some really helpful information coming out in the month of December. So pay attention to that, council and residents. And finally, I'm happy to announce that Denise Steeman, who was approved at the last council meeting, began with the village in the end of November. She's already found her niche and is going to be very helpful to us. Her first responsibility will be finalizing year-end numbers, and then she will move full force into the UAN transition, which is a goal for mid-late year next year. So unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do have a question. If Mr. Lumsden would kindly repeat the last date for leaf collection?
Is December the 15th, and then crews will do one more collection on each street following that date.
Just so I understand, if leaves are out on December 15th, they will definitely be picked up.
Correct.
Now, somebody could also get lucky if they're in another area of the village, throw their leaves out later, and maybe they would be picked up, maybe not.
Yes, those are some dice that you can roll.
Right. I don't recommend it.
But yeah, I would not recommend it either.
Right. Okay. All right, I'm going to ask our acting clerk, Ms. Baldridge, to read the list of the committee reports.
Thank you. Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee did meet on November 3rd and on November 29th. November 3rd was to look at funding for the new water meters and confirm funding sources. The meeting on 11/29 is when we work through the budget. We will have another Finance Committee coming up in early January, and I'll schedule that offline. Thanks.
Fire Committee, please.
The Fire Committee met on November 2 and on November 14. Items we took up included, of course, working on the budget and the recommendations for the ordinances that were placed on the agenda tonight. Other than that, let me turn it over to Captain Lee.
Thank you. November was another busy month for us. Obviously, we met with the committee, fire committee, and worked on the budget. So thanks to all the members of the fire committee for those meetings, and we appreciate the consideration given to the budget with that. So thank you. The officers also met several times. The department officers have met several times in the month of November, working on our planning for 2023, our operational plan, budget plan, and things of that nature. So more work to be done this month as well to prepare for next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Laws and Claims.
Laws and Claims Committee met on November the 16th, and we have a scheduled meeting that has been publicly announced for tomorrow morning at 9:30.
Thank you. Police Committee.
Police Committee met on November 15th, and the supermajority of that meeting we've already discussed tonight with the fireworks ordinance and the mayor's court fines and fees. We also went over the budget for 2023 and some of the capital items, and I believe we'll have this month off, so we're good to go till January. And with that, here's Chief Walsh.
Police Department had a good month traffic-wise, 75 citations. We also handled 4 or 5 auto accidents this month. And the end of the month, we also had 1 theft from a vehicle. Suspect busted out the window. The victim left her purse open in her car while she went to work. And they stole her purse and cash out of her car. That case is still under investigation. We've got video and several other leads to go on at this point in time. I'd like to thank council for passing the mayor's court fines this month, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Public Buildings and Historic Preservation.
Public Buildings met on November 16th, and Tom Aldifer was with us, and it was the biannual meeting to go over the public buildings with all the operating and maintenance issues of the year before we get into the harsh winter. And those minutes are posted online. It's a punch list that you could see if you're interested online. Nothing overly major, but just with our old buildings, just a lot of wear and tear, and as you know, the expenses add up. But we also approved the budget for 2023, and the good news is that's pretty much a flat line for next year. But be sure to thank Tom when you see him for all the hard work he does keeping these old buildings running. And that's all.
Thank you. Recreation and Playgrounds Committee did not meet this month. We had some discussion as part of our Finance Committee meeting, so that may be referenced in those minutes, but we do not have a meeting scheduled at this point. Streets, Public Improvements, and Lights Committee.
The Streets Committee did meet on 11/16, mainly to review budget items, and that went very well. We have a good schedule of work to do for 2023, and again, thanks to Tom Aldifer and his crew for the work that they do for the village. That's it for Streets.
Thank you. Utilities Committee.
Yes, the Utilities Committee met November 30th. The focus of the meeting was for the operating budget for the enterprise, which includes the water department as well as the wastewater department. That budget was approved this evening. We will meet early next year to discuss the challenges faced by the enterprise in terms of revenue and costs. We'll set a date at that time, which will be announced publicly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Reports from clerk and treasurer. Our clerk is not here. Mr. Treasurer, do you have a report?
Council should have a copy of the summary that I forwarded. We're doing good. Investments are up from the standpoint of returns. I was able to get some treasuries at 4.6 and a CD at 4.6 for 2 years. So that's good.
Very good. Thank you. We have received some financial reports. The 2022-11 general checking and certification for the payment of certain bills, and the 2022-11 enterprise checking for the certification for the payment of certain bills. Do I have a motion to acknowledge receipt of these reports?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And note that the next meeting will be on January 9th which is not the first Monday of the month, which is our normal time to meet, but of course, that happens to be the holiday that will be celebrated. January 2nd is the holiday, so we are moving the meeting to January 9th. And speaking of moving the meeting, I'm wondering if there's an appetite on council to move our meeting downstairs to the council chambers.
Yes.
Would anybody object to that? No. Marilyn?
I would object, but again, you just don't, I don't know. We're still experiencing infections, and COVID and its variants are still around us. We're aware of that. So for health reasons, I would say no at this stage. I may, of course, change my mind if things improve.
Okay.
I think that if we do meet downstairs, you'll see me in a mask.
Okay. Does anybody else have an objection to meeting downstairs?
Is that something we could revisit shortly before the meeting? Do we have to decide far in advance?
We don't have to decide now, but we do like to plan, you know, just for planning purposes. We can always say, we can change our minds if, let us say, the Zeta variant rises its head and does something strange. But I think for now, we will plan on meeting in the council chambers. The advantage of that is that it does allow for audiovisual presentations, which we've not been able to accommodate up here. And it's probably a little better for just the council members to hear each other. So with that, I will entertain a motion to
Mayor,
adjourn.
one thing.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Are we still on to meet at 6 o'clock on the 9th for the special GCIMC meeting? I had written that down 6 months ago on my calendar.
David?
Yeah,
Oh,
I have
for
that
the-
on my
yes,
calendar,
that's
too.
the members meeting.
Oh, okay.
The annual members meeting,
So
we
it-
had decided to do that just before the council meeting.
Is all of council asked to be?
And this is the, for the council. The council is the member,
Okay.
is the members of the
board.
CIC.
So we will be there at 6 PM, correct?
Okay, correct. And there will be an announcement going out on that.
Great.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There.
Thank you.
6.